Hello everyone and welcome to the Grumpy Surfer podcast. I'm your host, Ads Lyson. On the podcast today I have a British surfing icon, but before that, a couple of things if I may. Could you awesome people please take 2 minutes to subscribe or follow on your podcast provider and leave me a comment at the end? I would be eternally grateful if you did. The Grumpy Surfer is in collaboration with NORTHCORE surf gear. If you go to NORTHCORE Europe on the Tinterweb and use the code capital letters GrumpySurfer10, you'll receive 10% off your purchase. Okay, on the podcast today I have a former Cornish, English and European surfing champion. My guest started surfing during surfing's infancy in the United Kingdom and travelled Europe, Africa, or pretty much all over the world during the golden age of surfing in the 70s, 80s and 90s. I love conversations like this, talking and listening about surf travel and legacy surfing competitions. So, please enjoy a Grumpy Surfer conversation with an absolute British surfing legend, Jed Stone. Jed Stone, welcome to the Grumpy Surfer podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm fit, almost. I've just told you about my rotor cuff, but I'm still in there.
A few questions to start with then. Where are you? What have you done today? And have you surfed today?
I haven't surfed today. I should have gone in yesterday. I looked at it, but it started raining. I didn't want to get my hair wet. So I had a few other things I had planned. So today, basically, I've been doing a bit of artwork, and because I'm kind of like semi-retired now. I'm supposed to be working 3 days a week, but with this furlough thing, it's only 1 day a week. So I'm getting a lot of time off, so I can pick and choose, what I want to do, and I can pick good days. And nowadays, I don't go in so much when it's not quite good. When I was competing, I would go in every day I could, whether it's 1 to 2 foot onshore or 6 foot perfection. I would always go in because it kept my fitness levels up. Now my fitness levels are sort of coming down a bit, but I can still handle myself.
Yeah. Are you still living in Cornwall?
Yes, I live just outside. Well, kind of Newquay. It is Newquay now because Newquay's actually expanded, but originally it's just down from a little village called Trent Creek, but that is now being all sort of encapsulated in the big sort of expansion of Newquay.
Okay, so where's your local break then?
Local break is anywhere really that's working. We're lucky we've got choices because of tide times, wind directions, size of swells. We've got protection from bigger swells. So I literally look at, what there is coming through, and tide times, wind conditions, and obviously size as well. But my local places are actually is Fistral. I love Fistral. And other places around, Watergate, etc. That's local wise.
Yeah, I used to surf around the Newquay area quite a lot, probably about 15 years ago. And it's one of those places that is one of the only places I think where you, in about a 10-15 minute radius of being able to go from a north facing beach to a west facing beach to some other little secret spots that work too, which is kind of cool and very unique if I'm honest, for a coastline like that.
We're pretty lucky. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I stepped here. Going back into the 70s, we looked at other places in Cornwall, but we just got drawn to Newquay because the work was in Newquay, and didn't really want to come to Newquay, but I'm glad I did because there's a real good community, a surfing community here. Over the years, we all got to know each other, and I know they advertise it as the surfing mecca, but there's a local crew which are always there, sort of thing.
Yeah, why do you think Newquay is over the years, or especially over the last 20 years, since, surfing has become a prominent sort of feature in this country, I guess, from like films like Blue Juice and other things like that, where it's seen as, Newquay or that area of Cornwall is like the main place where people come down for like stag do's in the UK or something. Why do you think that is?
That changed. If you go back to the 70s, there was more discovering. We used to travel a lot more. You used to purposely put your surfboards on the top of your car so you would show somebody else that you were a surfer. And I've met so many friends who are still good friends in the surfing world to this day by doing that, by traveling in Cornwall, Devon, places like that. We would find breaks, and you'd go to some breaks where you would wait for other people to turn up to go in, certain, reef breaks, etc. And you would sit there and talk to each other, and they would be from Sennen or St Agnes or from, Croyd or wherever. And back in them days, you would go to these places and there would be nobody out. You'd sit there watching perfect, 4 to 6 foot barrels and nobody out. And you'd be talking to each other, kind of encouraging each other to, well, that doesn't look that big. We can manage that sort of thing. And you'd be out there, 3 or 4 of you. And then the next time you might see them would be a beach break, on the south coast or something like that. And that's how, it was in them days. Then the competition side of things came on the scene back in probably the late 70s and then the early 80s. And it was, well, I tell you, if you go to a party back in the early 70s, I would be there going, oh man, have you tried surfing? You need to try it. If I was up in Plymouth or somewhere, and these other mates of mine would be going, what are you doing, sort of thing? We don't get surf over here. And I said, honestly, you want to try it? So we're kind of like our worst enemies because we really publicised it and pushed it. And in when the competitions come along, then obviously it went more mainstream and it got out to so many poor people now. But I can't blame them because surfing is wonderful. It's healthy. You can have a good lifestyle from it. Mentally, it does everything. Every you go for a surf, every muscle in your body is used, and if it's big, the old mental side of it has to come into it as well.
Yeah, I've said this on quite a lot of podcasts, but I got to say it again. Mental health is massive these days, and having an escapism like surfing, I use it for that too. Even when it is rubbish, or I might go in the water, and you must have had those days as well, where it's absolutely pumping, and you go out there and you cannot do one thing right, and you see everybody else catching these awesome waves, and you're like, but even when you're out there, you're still escaping, whatever's troubling you because you're focusing on something else, and just having that for, 2-3 hours, a week can almost, sort your mentality out, can't it?
It definitely, everyone has periods in their life, and you can go out in the surf and it might still be there in the background, but you lose the harshness of it, and you're concentrating on what's around you. You could be talking to your mates in the water, and the conversation will be about something else, and it sort of chills out. And whenever you come in after a surf, you always have that good feeling. Even if you've had a bad session, you might have just had one wave where you've done one thing, and that's what you should remember. Not all the times you fell off, or the times you were dropped in on, or your leash snapped or whatever. Try and remember those good times, the good wave, and that gets you then through that day and the next day or whatever.
Yeah, I think that comes with age as well, though, doesn't it? When you're younger, you're like that. You're just trying to froth and get everything out, and you come out, you're like smashing stuff. You're like, But now you,
Like, I'm lucky, or guys of my age, lucky. We keep saying it because we surfed it, back in, there's guys older than me who surfed in the 60s and the 70s. That's when I started surfing, 72. And in them days, it wasn't really what you did on the wave. You just rode the wave and the feeling of riding a wave. And I always remember saying, and you probably still got it now, you had the wave of the day. It didn't matter what you did on that wave. If you took off on the biggest and the longest wave and you just went all the way through, that you were the guy. You caught the wave of the day. And nowadays, people think you've got to perform all the time. If you're a competitive surfer, yeah, you do. But there's this, there are a school of thought that where you have one of the older type boards and just sort of mellow, chill, do cutbacks. I'm seeing more of that as well. They don't want to be a competition surfer. They want to enjoy surfing for what it is on that side of things. So yeah, it's there for everyone.
I think over the last probably 5 years, definitely that the more retro style of surfing has come back because, I know where you're coming from with that, where, you're going out on a session and everybody's kind of like, well, I need to do this and that. And then you kind of get upset with yourself because you haven't done certain things. And, I've been guilty of that, where, especially when you watch yourself back as well, technique and watching the pros in social media and all these edits that come out, everybody's so critical these days, and I think they've kind of lost the point of what kind of surfing, the stoke of surfing is, being out in the ocean and actually having fun and enjoying yourself, not trying to like punch the back out of a wave. Well, that's okay if you can do that, but if you try and do it and don't do it, you're going to ruin your session because you're not enjoying yourself.
Yeah, from like a competitive point of view, if you go out and you catch a really good wave and you smash it to pieces, you still get that feeling, you still get that stoke because you've performed and in your head you've done it's all there, it's worked out good. But then you can go out on another day and similar conditions and kind of not bother so much, just ride the wave for what it is and feel, you're in the water and, we've had dolphins in the water, or your friends are there and you're just having a good time. You don't have to perform like that, but they'll still get that feeling and stoked as somebody who would just go out on, a foamy pop out and catch and just go along the wave in a straight line. They'll similar, but different levels. That's what all it is. But they'll still get the same stoke. Yeah,
100% agree. Let's go back a little bit. So, where did you grow up initially?
I was born in Malta because my father was a Marine, Royal Marine, and we lived in Malta for a few years when I was first few years. Then we came back to the UK. Then we went back to Malta. They were the best sort of childhood days because living in a hot country, you only went to school in the mornings and then you were down the beach all the time. Didn't know about surfing in them days, which I had because Malta gets surf as well. And then come back to the UK again, Singapore, places like that. So we travelled all the way through my life. Then I joined the Navy myself and again travelled and met Leslie and then needed to settle down and need to get out of the Navy and go travelling, which is kind of what we've done. We've ended up living in Newquay.
Yeah. How did you find being in the Navy? You were in the Navy, the late 60s, early 70s?
70s, early 70s.
Early 70s.
Kind of, yeah, I came out in 76.
Okay.
We got married in 76. I started surfing late 72. And I was lucky. I was on HMS Salisbury, which is no longer around. It was a little frigate, and we had 18 months refit. So that was in Plymouth, so it was great. I could go to, like, certain breaks on the south coast, which I won't name, and then obviously head down to Newquay and places like that. Sometimes in the evening, in the summer, you'd finish at sort of like 4:30, straight in the car down with some mates who were on Euryalus, and we'd go for a surf wherever it was. But then after refit, we did what they call fly the flag, show the flag off. So we sailed all the way down. We were a lone ship. We sailed down the west coast of Africa, right the way around the Cape, up into through Madagascar Straits, etc. We went to it was called Ceylon in them days, Maldives, Diego Garcia, Mauritius, and guess who had his surfboard with him? I was lucky. I had to get special permission to take the surfboard on board, and wherever we went, I would request permission to go surfing, and my captain and Jimmy, the second in command, thought it was a good way of showing the Navy, because I would go, if we were in port somewhere, we would hire a car or a mini moke or something like that, and we'd drive like 100 miles up the coast and find surf breaks that I kind of knew about, or just go out there, and we just used to show people photographs of waves and just say, do you know anywhere that has this sort of thing? And they'd say, oh, try that place, and we'd drive like 100 miles and try and find that place. And we scored lucky a lot of the times. So you think this is back in 1970, 74. I got to surf like Hikidua in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. I was the only surfer there at that time. I'd got a little black and white photograph in the black and white surf magazine that was around here. It was called Surf, and it was just like a little photograph at the top, and it said, Hikidua, if ever you're in Ceylon, visit this place. So as soon as I saw Ceylon was on the list, that was like, oh, I've got to get special leave to get down there. And we went down there for a week. We had a good time.
Whereabouts did you surf? In Ceylon or Sri Lanka?
Hikidua.
Hikidua.
Yeah,
okay.
Hikidua.
That's what, the southwest coast, is that right?
It is right down the bottom end. We just got off in Colombo. I think it's Colombo we went to, sailed in there. We hired a Morris 1000, this guy, a taxi driver. He had a Morris 1000. I put my surfboard on the top, and we said, Hikidua. We had no idea where he was going to take us. And he drove us all the way down there. And then we said to him, can you come back in a week's time? And he said, yeah. And there he was on the dot, a week's time, waiting for us. And he took us all the way back again.
What was your first thoughts when you went down to the beach and had a look out to the setup down there? It must have been pretty epic, right?
Well, it was only small waves when I was there, and I got freaked out because I was out in the water on my own, and then this big black thing went underneath me, and I was like, oh my God, rushed to the beach, as you did. That happened several times.
Yeah, I think I've only ever had one experience like that where it proper freaked me out, and I was at South Fistral and the seal went underneath me. It was the first time I'd ever experienced something like that, and pretty much had to change my wetsuit. That's how bad it was.
I think there's two episodes where I was out at a place called Malindi in Kenya, and again I was the only one out there, and it's this big long sweeping beach goes for miles, it does, and it was early morning. It was perfect, probably about 3 to 4 foot. And I'm out there, I'm sat out there. I've been out there for a while. I was just thinking about going in and get some breakfast. And there was, where the water's like oil, it's glassy as. And then all of a sudden, this about 15, 20 foot away from me, this fin come out, slid over the top, and I went back down again. And I've never paddled so fast in my life to get to the beach. And it's always the way. There's no waves coming through. I motored into the beach, stood on the sand, all breathless, just looked back, and there's no sign of anything. And it was like, was it or wasn't it? You don't know. So yeah. Then I went and had breakfast.
It's probably a good shout, to be honest. I had a couple of friends that did the trip down to South Africa, and they went out of this one break that I think I remember the story goes, and they were just paddling out. There's three of them, and these two local lads were paddling back, and they're like, "No, don't go out there. There's like a 10 foot shark, probably a great white out there." And they were like, turned around, they went straight back into the beach again. I don't think they went back out for a couple of days.
Well, honestly, the South African surfers, they have that all the time, and to them, they've obviously got sense in the water. But I've some of my friends from over there told me about situations, and you think, we paddle out into our water, and there's pretty much, other than weaver fish, maybe if you stand on them, you're pretty much safe out there. There's nothing really that ever worries you. You might get the sea lion come along, but most of the time they're just inquisitive and they look at you. But we're quite lucky in that respect. A lot of the places, warmer climates, you have to keep your senses around you, because you're in their environment, and to some of them you might be just inquisitive. They might think you're food or whatever. So I always look at the fish in the water jumping. If you're out somewhere and small fish are jumping out around you, that means there's a slightly bigger fish jumping out, going after them. If you see slightly bigger fish jumping, then you start thinking, well, there's something bigger chasing them. That's kind of what I look out for.
You kind of brought a little memory up in my head when you were talking about 5 years ago. I did a boat trip out into the Maldives, and one morning we were just sat in the lineup, and there was a load of I don't know what fish they are, like, let's call them reef fish, were on the top, and they started sort of like coming out the top, and then probably about 2 or 3 minutes later, because you can see obviously the reef and stuff because it's crystal clear water there.
Yeah.
There was a couple of black-tip reef sharks just swimming about, probably about 4 or 5 foot long, and I was like, well, there's not a lot I could do here, because the boat was miles away. I was miles away from the shore. Let's just accept it.
Well, they're more interested in the fish, probably. But Maldives, if it was one place I would love to go back to, it would be the Maldives. It's the only time I've been on a trip where you arrive and you don't have to drive anywhere. You boat out to your island, you walk to the surf break from your little lodge or wherever it is, or you walk down to the harbour, get on a boat, and they sail you off to another surf break. And the temperature of the water, the fish, I've never seen so many colours and things, just snorkeling, just off where the drop-off zone is on the reef, snorkeling, and me and Leslie were just laying there in the water with our snorkel mask on, and we saw everything from a grouper to the reef sharks and the manta rays swimming past us, and we're just like gobsmacked.
Did you see any barracudas there?
Leslie, we're in Puerto Rico. Yeah, Puerto Rico. Yeah, Puerto Rico. Not Costa Rica, Puerto Rico. And we were just snorkeling, and Leslie is like holding my hand, and she's like tugging me, and she's pointing to this fish. And I looked, and it's a barracuda, and it's literally just sat there staring straight at her about 4 foot away. And I'm like pulling her. And what it was is she was wearing a pendant, which was like sparkling in the water.
Oh, man.
And I'm going quick, and I managed to say to her, look, get out of the water, move away. And then we talked about it, and I said, that was a barracuda. And I said, it was interested in you. I said, so, yeah.
They're vicious looking creatures, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Yeah,
This was just wasn't in a shoal either. Normally you'll see them in a shoal. This was just like one lone one sort of
the only
thing.
reason why I say that is that you're talking about where the reefs are and they drop off. Where one day I was kind of surfed out a little bit, so I went back to like the outrigger boat that they had that was just moored up outside the break that we were at, and I did a bit of snorkeling, and it's quite. This is gonna sound really weird. I don't like deep water.
Yeah,
It like really freaks me out. So snorkeling
yeah,
around with a reef break where it's sort of 4, 5, 6 foot deep, and then it drops off. I was like, it makes my heart palpitate, and I'm like, I start getting freaked out and a little bit of anxiety. And anyway, when I turned around, because the boat was probably about 20 meters away from like where the edge of the shelf was, I was swimming back underneath, and then and I clocked it, and it was underneath the boat. It was just sat underneath the boat, and it wasn't small. It was big, and I was
yeah,
like, "How am I gonna get out of here?" I was like, "It's gonna schnapp on my leg," because they're proper horrible looking creature. It's like a water dragon, isn't it?
yeah. Its teeth look vicious. Yeah,
Going back
but
to
the reef does drop off, doesn't it? It
yeah,
literally is there, and then it's just like goes down like a deep shelf, and you know, yeah,
I watched a few documentaries about deep sea divers. What do they call it? Like sport diving, and
yeah,
where they're going like 100, couple of 100 feet down on a single breath. And I'm like, man, how do they do that? I mean, that would freak me out. Going just seeing anything black and nothing underneath me. I don't even know why I'm looking down to the floors there, but
yeah.
it just freaks me out.
Yeah. We used to do our hands to bathe. Excuse me. When I was in the Navy, sorry, we were. I just have a thing. It's mint tea. Yeah, we had. They called hands to bathe just off of the Cape, South Africa, and we all jumped in, and you can't see. No land was visible, and they have a guy there with a gun just in case. But when you jump in the water and you put your head under and you look, you just know there's nothing. The depth. You've got no idea the depth. It just light just goes down. It gets darker and darker. You couldn't see any fish around. We were sort of mid-ocean, and your only life. It's kind of weird. The only lifeline is that little ladder getting up the side of the ship, sort of thing. Don't go away.
Yeah, I've seen some old photos uh, of that sort of thing. Being in the Marines, some people are going to proper spit feathers at me about this. I've been in just over 20 years now, and I've never been on a ship once, so I've not experienced, a ship stopping in the middle of the ocean and lads jumping off it. But yeah, I've seen some old
Yeah,
photos of guys just jumping off, and I'm like, yeah, that I probably wouldn't do it if I'm perfectly honest, unless I had like I don't know, an SUP. Inflatable SUPs are quite prevalent these days. I probably wouldn't have anything. I
yeah.
wouldn't do it if I'm perfectly honest.
No, no.
Going back, so you said you started surfing in 1972 when you were still in the Navy. So
Yeah.
obviously surfing wasn't very well, it wasn't advertised at all. So how did you get into that? Did you just see someone in the water
It,
and go, I want to do that,
no,
or
it was my brother-in-law, Richard. He was in the Navy, and he lived in Cornwall, so he'd grown up in Cornwall. And I used to come down, me and Darby Allen off of the Salisbury. We used to play a lot of football, and yeah, we were all right at it. And we got to play for a local club down uh, outside of Riora. I can't remember what it was called even, but they used to actually pay us to play, which was sounds good, doesn't it? A tenner. We used to get a tenner
that went a long
between the
way in
two of
them
us.
days?
Well, it paid for the petrol, and we used to enjoy playing football, so we used to come down. But we come down for this match, I think it was on the Sunday, and my brother-in-law on the Friday said, have you tried surfing? Do you want to go surfing? I'm going to go surfing tomorrow. I said, yeah, we're up for that. So we went to a place, it's called Red River Hale. It's no longer Red River Hale now, it's Gwythian. But in them days, there was a Red River used to run out, and it was all the workings for the dust and stuff, whatever, coming from the local mines. And we got down there. I had a pair of football shorts and a rugby shirt, and he had one board, which he'd made himself, and he took us down there. There was me and Darby, and he showed us what to do, and then we went out, and then we were getting, so like we just paddled this and jumped up, and I stood up, and I was just going in a straight line, with the white water towards the beach, and I'm thinking, I like this. This is fun, this. And we had that one session, and I got back to Salisbury, and I just sat there and I thought, I've got to do that again. And that's when my life changed. I just had to do it. And I then really I got down to St Ives, and I went and saw Charlie Williams at his surf shop there, the Silver Surfer. And I said, I want to start surfing. What do you recommend? And he pulled this board out for me. He said, go with this. In 3 or 4 months, bring it back, and we'll sort you out something else. And exchange that, and that's how I got going. Started surfing. My first sort of local break was St Ives.
What size board was it that you?
The first board, it was what I think you would class as a mini Mao nowadays. It was probably about 8 foot, rounded nose, traditional type, but a short and long board basically. And I got really on well with that. And then I was looking at magazines going and seeing all these guys on shorter boards. So I went straight then to a creamed honey 6'2", and it took me a little while to transition, but I persevered with it, and I just kept going from there.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a big step down going from an 8 foot down to a 6'2".
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, the 6'2s in like the 70s would have had more foam volume. They were quite floatable, but there was a lot of experimentation going on with the shapes and the tails and the boards and concaves. Not concaves so much in them days, but it was more people would start putting channels in them and things like that.
What was the vibe like back then, sort of like 72, 76? Did when you started to go, right, I want to start surfing, was there sort of like a local crew, or was there just like 1 or 2 people around like the local beaches there?
Well, you had each area had its kind of local crews, like down the Stenham Way, like Harvey Hoare and Colin Wilson, guys like that, and then you'd have each place would have its local crew. And in them days, we all travelled. It was nothing to drive from here. If the conditions were not quite right, many a time I've driven down to like Senan and St Agnes, and then across to the south coast and checked the south coast, and invariably ended up coming back and surfing Towel. It was that's what you did. You just travelled around.
Did you
yeah, go on.
Did you know much about like weather conditions and or sort of like the science of how swells were developed back in those days? Because I can't imagine there would have been that much literature out there apart from going to the library and maybe pulling something out from a skipper's manual or something like that about tides and all that sort of thing.
Well, actually, we were quite genned up because we used to read the charts. A friend of mine he's an oceanographer, Paul Russell. He used to be one of our top surfers as well. He explained charts to me, and it was looking at the BBC forecast used to show you, and you'd see the patterns, and there was a low pressure, and we would know that if that low pressure was down coming up, we would kind of work out it'd probably take about 2-3 days for the swell to start to hit, depending on how close it was and how deep it was. And then if it moved and was generating down towards the south coast, we would know that, you know, at a certain point of time, the wind would change and the swell would be there and it would clean up, and that's how it would work out. I remember sitting at a certain break, which needs a certain window of swell, with friends of mine, Dave Waite and Anthony Waite, and a guy called Julian Galloway, and they studied oceanography as well, and they knew exactly when that place was going to work, even to the point where you'd be sitting there and it'd be like 1 to 2 foot, and they'd be saying, "Don't worry, when the tide starts coming in, we're going to have 4 to 6 foot." And you know, the number of times they were right, and we'd surfed that place, maybe 4 or 5 of us.
That's some good friends to have, isn't it? There.
Yeah, I mean, these places now, everyone kind of knows about them, but they're still special places.
Yeah, you're talking about the secret spots.
Well, I won't mention. We've got so many good breaks, and with it being so crowded nowadays, you know, to encourage more people to go to them, it doesn't help. You know, if you're a local surfer and you're living, and that's your break, and you know you're going out there and there's 40 guys out, it tarnishes it a bit. It just doesn't, you know, lead to good vibes in your head and stuff, does it? Whereas if you're surfing it with 3 or 4 of your mates, you know.
Yeah, I mean, these days that's kind of the dream, isn't it? It's quite difficult. Even some of those more sheltered spots that you know of, that you don't think anybody else does. You know, even those are still quite crowded, because sometimes they're just sort of like, you know, reef breaks where there's a single point takeoff, and it can be quite difficult when it gets super crowded. You might get like 1 or 2 waves in a couple of hours, and then you're like, you know.
Yeah, you can. I mean, even, you know, you can go to Fistral sometimes, turn up at the right time, and you can be the only one out. So, you know, cherish that moment. I remember sat out there with me, my son Andrew. There was it's a little spot. I won't say where it is. We knew it was going to get busy because everyone knows about it and everyone was talking about it. So we just sort of turned up, and there was just me and Andrew. We paddled out. It was a perfect sunny day, 3 foot or so, lovely fun waves. For about half an hour, we had a ball, and then everyone started coming out. But you know, if you know them people, it then becomes like a vibe in the water, and you know, sort of encouraging everybody else to catch a wave and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I had that a couple of weeks ago before lockdown, when the start of the Hurricane Epsilon came in, and I went to a couple of the places up by Ilfracombe, and well, I went to Lynmouth, and it was like I thought it was going to be okay. It was really, really big, and the wind was on it, and there was loads of people out there. And I sat up on the cliff on the other side, just watching it, and there was loads of waves, but there wasn't that many people catching anything. So me and my mate, we decided we drove back towards Minehead. And
oh right, I thought you were going to go to another place. Don't mention it.
No. So we went back towards that way, and we found this little spot that I knew, and we went there, and there was 3 other people out there, and every 2 minutes there was a set that came through. There was no wind because it was like away from the cliffs. It was blowing like 30-mile-an-hour winds, and we got there and there was no wind. And for about an hour, we just traded these, you know, 50, 60, 100-meter rides that were coming through. Really nice, really clean, just peeling down. And then I think everyone cottoned onto it, and the world just descended down there. And it was just like that, right, should get out, because it kind of ruined it, because everyone was just dropping in on each other, and yeah, it pretty ruined it, to be honest.
but that's what I mean. You do get that occasion. I mean, if you go back to the 70s, we got that. You know, we were spoiled. We got that all the time. But nowadays it's few and far between. But just cherish those moments when you do get them.
Exactly. So you came out of the Navy in 76, started in 72, and you got married to your wife now, Leslie. So how did
Yeah.
you end up settling down in Cornwall?
Well, the first thing we did was I came out in the August in '76, and I'd gone up London and I bought a V-dub split windscreen, £300. We got it down here. Me and Leslie converted it into our own little conversion, sort of orange bowl for the wash bowl and stuff like that. And we had it just how we wanted it, and we got on a ferry. First thing I did was I took it to the V-dub place in Plymouth, and I said, can you give it a service? I said, we've just bought this. We're just going to go away on a journey. Want to see, what you think. So I come back after the service, and he said, where are you going? I said, we're going to Morocco. And he says, I wouldn't drive it around that roundabout he's going, let alone take it down to Morocco. But, we were young, didn't care. We said, well, if it breaks down, we'll leave it there and we'll hitchhike back. That was the kind of attitude you had. And so we just went off, and we went down France, all through the French breaks in September, and worked our way down through Portugal, North Spain, down to Portugal, then back in, and then down to Algeciras, and went across on the ferry, Ceuta, down to Kenitra. We ended up at Kenitra. So we were there until after New Year. And then we came back. So we were away for about three getting up towards 4 months.
I take it your wife surfs as well?
No.
Oh, right.
She used to like bodyboarding, with a bodyboard. But to be honest, she's always just liked being at the beach and sunshine and that sort of thing.
Yeah, my wife, she's from up in New Brighton, up Liverpool way, and I took her down to Sawton once, and I bought the old Swell yellow and blue foamies. I got her on one of those and took her down there in the summer, and I think she was more interested in sunbathing on it behind the break than she was surfing on it.
But Leslie's always been good, especially when I started surfing contests, because she would come down the beach and she would judge me. So, if I came in, she would say, you should have done that on that wave. You did all right on that one. Or she would give me signs, like I was in the water, and she would give me signs to say, I was first, second, third. You need to get this going, otherwise you're not going to get through on this one, sort of thing, which kind of helped me out on that, which was really helpful.
What were the best breaks that you stopped at when you were travelling down in your van during that time? So I imagine that you were just quite desolate, really, because you had the odd person that travelled, but not many people did trips like that, especially from the UK, did they really, around that time?
No, there was, you would turn up at a place and maybe 3 other vans there, but maybe a pod of Aussies. You would get a group of, one place we went to, some boys from Wales. There was guys from Jersey, all these different places, but you never turned up anywhere and there was 20 vans or anything like that. You would find another van and you maybe just the two of you camped out. One place I always remember is what they call Cornish now, super tubes and all that. There was a Barra Vista and a bit of wasteland, and there was 4 of us, 4 vans. I'm on my own in our van, and then there was a group of about 3 lads in another van. There was 4 of us, and we were there for weeks on end. And we used to surf the right-hander by the harbour wall there. And to get to super tubes, you had to walk along the beach. There was no roads or anything in them days. So we would surf the right-hander in the morning and then just walk along the beach in the afternoon and surf super tubes on, maybe 4 of yous out there. Or then Balliol Island, if that was working. But there's so many places like that all the way down. You think of all the names of the places you'd like to go to now, and we would have them to ourselves, even round Lisbon area, one of the places there, which must be so crowded nowadays, but in them days there was a small crew of local surfers there, probably 4 or 5 of them in the water, and that would be busy.
Yeah, we went to Cornish, maybe a couple of years ago. It was the first time I've ever been there. I've obviously seen the films and the CTs, there pretty much every single year by this year for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, whenever I go traveling or I've been traveling surfing, I never envisage the crowds that are there either. But what I have noticed is the locals like to give you hassle when you get there. But if you hold your own and you're just like that, because I remember this one, it was called Santa Rita. Was the break that the beach that we ended up at, and it was like an A-frame peak, probably about 3 or 4 foot, really nice, but it was just sort of like one takeoff place. And I paddled out there with one of my mates, and I took off on this wave that came through, absolute cooped it, paddled back out, and this guy come up to us and said, "You're dangerous, you get out, you're dangerous." And I was like that. All right, mate. So I paddled off a little bit, gave him a little bit of space, and then paddled back around, waited my turn, and I caught one and all the way back in. They were fine after that, and I think it's just that if you show up and you think you're gonna hassle people for waves, you got the wrong answer, especially when you're abroad and it's not your breaks.
No, you do, it's just respect. You've got to have respect. It's their break. You're an outsider as such. Them guys are just like ourselves. They just want to have their wave, sort of thing. If you come in with a certain attitude, you'll get that attitude back. My philosophy all the way through is just eat humble pie. They'll either warm to you or they won't. I've had situations, but they've never got to a certain point, sort of thing. I always remember once in France, there was a break I turned up at, all the beach breaks. It was super busy, really nice waves, evening, just starting to glass off. And I looked along, probably like about half a mile or so, and I saw a group of about 5 or 6 guys out on this really nice looking wave. So I thought, I'll go down there. So I walked along, eventually paddled out. I couldn't get away. There's no way they were going to let me get away. Not at all. So I just bided my time, just sat there, and, they were doing things like paddling in front of me and all this sort of thing. And then another guy come out, and I thought, I recognize him. And it was Jean Louis Poupinel, and he was the French champion. And I'd met him previously in Ireland at the Europeans. And I goes, "John," and he goes, "Oh, Jed," and we started talking, and everything changed in the water. It's just like, you can have that way, that it was just, at that time I knew the right person in the right space, sort of thing. But there was no point in getting aggressive with anyone, because it just wouldn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, and it ruins it for yourself as well.
I'm not an aggressive person anyway, so.
Yeah. What was it like, traveling over from, I take it, did you get the ferry over from Spain or Gibraltar to go over to Algiers?
We got it from Algeciras.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I was in with Salisbury, we were at Gibraltar, and I got the ferry from Gibraltar to Morocco, and that was landed in Tangiers.
Okay.
And that was the first time I surfed Morocco. But when we went down in the van, me and Leslie, we went over from Algeciras to Spanish Ceuta,
Okay.
and then through down into Morocco. Then
What was that? I mean, that must have been even more desolate than, the Basque Country and around that area, and sort of like the southwest of Spain, down by Sagres, because I can't imagine it was very. There was much inhabitants around at that time.
the Morocco people would turn up at a weekend, especially, and I always remember at Kenitra, they'd line the harbour, not the harbour, the river. There's like a big wall with a lighthouse at the end of it, and they would be stood along there, just watching us surf. And there was probably about half a dozen of us, some couple of Aussies, a couple of guys from Wales, and we were like entertainment. Like, look at what these people are doing, and now you've got a lot of really good Moroccan surfers in themselves. I remember we ran out of money when we got down there, and I sold one of my boards for like 100 and something quid, and that was just to get us back to the UK. We managed to live. We budgeted £1 a day, and that included our petrol, and that's what we lived on. We went over it once at Christmas because we went out and bought some meat and things, but most of the time we just lived on veg and vegetable stews and eggs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's good when you live like that, isn't it? But did you find it difficult? Was it kind of like you got into a routine with it, like you were doing the military, because you get into routines with that, don't you?
It was the second time we went down to do the same sort of trip. It was quite hard. We met some really good friends. We were at NORTHCORE in France, and in them days you could park down in the square, and we were sort of like parked down there, and these guys turned up, and I think it was from Farnborough, but they're good mates of mine now, Gary Collins and Pete Collins and their little crew. And they were down for like a 2-week trip, and they had money, and they were buying things like Mars bars and sitting there next to us eating these things. And we were just like budgeting on, next to nothing, and just like drooling.
Yeah, sucking on some pebbles from the beach.
Yeah.
So when did you get into your competitive days? So when did you decide that surfing was going to be something that you might kind of make a semi-career path out of and get into?
Just purely by luck. I must have been surfing all right, and there's a guy called Tad Siastula, and he was the founder of the Vitamin C surfboards, and I was down Western, I think it was, and I'd just come out of the water, and he come up to me and said, "Jed," he said, "do you want to join our team?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I'm getting a team together because back in, I can't remember exactly when it was, but Vitamin C started a team, Ocean Magic started a team, and like Boardwalk had a team. There was lots of teams in Newquay, and we used to have like competitions, and we planned it so like, right, tonight is Ocean Magic v Vitamin C, and the Ocean Magic boys would turn up, Vitamin C boys would turn up, and we'd have a mini competition, and we had like a league, and you had like Seafins boys, Gary and Pete, and it was a friendly all get together after work in the summer, and he just said, "Do you want to be in the team?" And I said, what do I get, happens with it? And he says, "Well, you'll get a free wetsuit." I said, I'm in so that was the start of it, and I must have got competitive, because from that moment on, my surfing changed. And I've been lucky. I've had a good run. I got lucky in some events. And,
because you
got to meet some wonderful people.
Yeah, I can imagine the especially sort of like in the 70s, 80s, and maybe the early 90s, the crews that would bounce around all the comps that that you would have done, the Cornish, the British, and the Europeans. It would have been the same people turning up to those competitions that were any good, that were going to do well in those competitions as well.
Yeah, there was nowadays you call it like, your top 16 or top 30 surfers, but you hardcore ones would follow whatever the competitions were. But you turn up at a place, you would always have your local good surfers who didn't do all the other competitions. Did you always had to be wary. You never took anything for granted. You get a heat sheet and you see a name there that you kind of don't recognize, but you think to yourself, well, don't take nothing for granted. This guy could be, hot sort of thing. So you always had that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, because you won the Cornish, the British surf champs, and also the Europeans, didn't you? And you've won them all multiple times.
I've been, I won the English Open, the actual Open event. I won the Cornish and Open championships, and a few others. And then I started to get old because, like 28, you had the seniors, and then it was 35 and over. And once I kind of I just kept it going because I enjoyed meeting up with, competitors that I'd surfed with. And I've been lucky because I managed to surf competitively, even on the UK Pro Tour, I was 60, and I retired when I was 60. So, I had a good spell of that, of the competition era, and I was lucky. I got to surf against, you in competitions with, like Tom Carroll and guys when they come over for the Fosters and that. I managed to make the main event 3 times, and it was like a buzz being like, say you were a golfer and you went to a golf competition, you could compete against Tiger Woods for paying just your normal entry fee. It would just be like, oh wow, this is unbelievable. Well, that's what it was like for us. These guys were coming from Australia, from America, from Hawaii, and to our local break, and we were having to be able to get in the water with them and get beat.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy, isn't it? And I was talking to somebody the other day where that they were saying that, especially from the surf scene as well, you kind of look up to those sort of people, like Jerry Lopez and your Tom Carrolls, your Rabbits and all those type of people. And then, being in a situation like you were, I could imagine you see these guys in the magazines, and then you meet them, and then you're competing against them as well. That's got to be a special type of feeling as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and what people forget is these guys, they're just like us. They're just normal guys, and they're lucky in that they've got a skill set and they're the best in the world. But when you sit down and talk to them, over a beer or something like that, or Cornish cream tea on some occasions, some of the stories they tell you, and what everyone in the surfing community knows is when you travel, you end up in a place, and all of a sudden somebody will walk out the water and you go, oh my God, it's whoever. You might not have seen them for like 5 years or 10 years, and there they are. They're walking out the water, and you just have a real, we'll have a beer together later on and stuff like this. So, yeah, that's what I like about the surfing community. You can pretty much go anywhere in the world, and you'll meet up with somebody or somebody who knows somebody else, and you gain new friends from that side of it.
What were some of the best locations that you managed to surf at as a competitor? Or your favourite?
It's kind of a bit hard with competitive side of it, because a lot of the time you would turn up somewhere, you surf that place, whatever it is, on the day or the preceding days, and then you go away again. One good example of that is I'd had a really good episode at Thurso, and then the following year we drove up, me and Leslie in the van, drove all the way up to Thurso. It took us 2 days to get up there. I'm sat there, it's kind of like offshore, it's about 6 to 8 foot solid, and it's like that dark look to the wave, and I had a real stiff back, and I thought, oh, there's no way I can handle that. No, I'm going to have to get ready for tomorrow because that's where my heat was going to be. And then it just totally changed the next day. It was about 3 to 4 foot onshore, raining. I paddled out in the heat, got knocked out, got back in the van and drove all the way back again. So, but you'll go up there another time and spend like a month up there, and you will score incredible waves, and you will have a different thing. So my favorite waves are normally when I'm free surfing, somewhere, and it can be anywhere. It can be a 2 foot day somewhere, or it could be a 6 foot day somewhere. It's if I'm feeling happy and I'm feeling good, and I come out of the water feeling happy and good. That's, to me, is a good day.
When did you first sort of like start getting sponsored and getting money off those? Back in those days, when you did get those sponsors as well, was it enough for you to travel as well to compete?
I was lucky. I'd like to thank a lot of them, because right from Vitamin C, Ocean Magic, I've got a list of them: Hawaiian Islands Creations, Quiver, Fourth, and then my wetsuits with Malcolm, snug wetsuits, and then I had Body Glove, and I was lucky to get Pick Up Reef and Solomon, but I didn't get a lot of money. I got basically, from the time I started being sponsored until I was 60, I pretty much didn't buy any clothes. I didn't buy any wetsuits, boards, and I kind of worked out roughly how much I was getting in product, etc. And then I would then say to myself, right, if I'm going on this tour, it's going to cost me that much in petrol to get there, and my entry fees and stuff. And then there may be some like financial help towards that. And if I was, representing Britain or England, I would be able to, go to my sponsor and just say, look, I need help. I'm willing to pay for this. Can you help me out on the airfare or whatever sort of thing? And that's kind of how it worked. And I was happy with that. Nowadays there is a lucrative living for them, with their sponsorships and also advertising, etc. But this COVID doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the young surfers, because But I would just say to them, hang on in there, keep your levels up, because it's going to change. It'll go back. It'll come back, and you'll be back out there, hopefully, earning yourself a good living and enjoying yourself.
I've got a few conspiracy theories about this, but we'll talk about them a lot later or offline.
Well,
so,
people have just got to look after themselves, and if they look after themselves, they look after other people. And we'll get through this. Humanity's got through it before. We just want to be around to get through it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've got this thing called social media and the internet, which puts a lot of added unforeseen pressure on people that they don't necessarily need. Extra pressures on top of each other as well. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be focusing so much on what other people are doing and what aren't we doing. And I think that's what's kind of killing people mentally and physically as well, is being able to see all over the world what's going on too.
There's a lot of countries out there will be having a lot worse situation than what we are. Like I say, you just got to. I was lucky when I was in the Navy. I did a specialist course on NBCD, nuclear, biological, chemical defence, and so I was taught about these things, and I was told back in the 70s that you won't get a nuclear war. Your main countries won't revert to nuclear weapons. You're more likely, this is because of forces we were trained, you're more likely to get a chemical or biological warfare, because it makes sense. You can wipe out people and the land is still usable. Whereas if you nuclear weapons, you wipe out people, you wipe out the country as well. So from that training in them days, when this popped up, I was like, this is biological. It's we know how it's transferred from one person to another. If you eliminate those ways it's transferred, you will eventually eliminate it. But it's been, obviously, it's affected everyone, hasn't it? Everyone around the world. I've never known it. Nobody in our lifetime has known anything like this. Maybe if you lived through the Spanish flu, and you're that age, you're 100 years old now. Well, no, you'd have to be a lot older than that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But you would have known what went on then, and I would imagine it's very similar to what's going on now.
Yeah, I think our lifetimes we've seen so much transition from, I was on the tail end of, I don't want to say your era because that makes it sound old, but the media side of things. I didn't have internet, didn't have a phone, I had a TV, had 4 channels. That's pretty much it. So the transition and the technology advancement in the last 20 to 30 years has been significant. And I don't think as a race of people, we've been able to evolve with that too much.
It could be, yeah.
But that's probably
the days when we didn't have a telephone, didn't have a telly. People nowadays probably think, what? But I remember when we got our first telly, when we got our first colour television, when we actually got a phone in the house, a phone. Me and Leslie, we used to contact each other by phone box. I was based at Weymouth, and I would go out to the red pillar phone boxes, go out to that phone box. Leslie would go out to her phone box in Plymouth, and we'd have a certain time where we would ring those phone boxes. And that's how we contacted each other.
Yeah, I was similar when I met my wife. Was the first sort of infancy of when Facebook was coming about, and I remember being up in Scotland. I was based up at Faslane, and our job there was to look after the nukes while they were in the submarines, getting changed over or serviced. And the only phone we had there was in the top of this tower. And it was like a proper, do you remember the old dial ones where you put your finger and you click it all the way around and you let it read dial? It was one of them.
You had to put the coins in?
No. This was free. That was only kind of the only perk, but you had to wait your turn, whether it's to phone your missus or to phone back to your mum, and you went in there once a day, and that was the only comms you really had apart from all the lads together. It was quite crazy, really.
Yeah. That was when I did that trip around Africa on Salisbury. We had one phone call when we were in the Indian Ocean, and that phone call was for 2 minutes, and that was it. And Leslie drove from Plymouth, because you only allowed one number you could ring. So I had to ring my mum and dad, and Leslie had to drive from Plymouth down to my mum and dad's and wait for the phone call. And I felt sorry for her, because all I wanted to do was talk to Leslie, obviously, because I was in love with her. And she got the last sort of like 15 seconds, I think, because of my brothers and sisters, my mum, my dad, it's like that. But that was it. That's the only phone contact we had I was away for like 4 or 5 months, I think it was.
That's crazy times, really, when you go back and think about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digressed a little bit here. Going back to you talking about your sponsors, and you got kitted out pretty much for what, 40 years, pretty much. In between, is it around about that? Do you reckon? 20 years.
Yeah. No, longer than that, because it would have been sort of, say 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, 2000. Yeah, 35 years maybe.
35 years, yeah. So when you weren't competing, you weren't traveling, what did you do for work?
I was in the Navy, and obviously I come out of the Navy. Then I did a bit of, I was a panel beater, and I started doing airbrushing, and then I was like doing some surfboards. I've done surfboards since 1983, and then work-wise, 1981, I started working for a hotel, and I'm still there.
Okay, nice.
And they've been really helpful, you know, when I needed time off for contests and stuff. Because, you know, I had a mortgage, and my boys, Joff and Andrew, they were, you know, sort of being brought up. And you know, when you've got two young kids, and you're not on good wages and stuff, it can be, you know, hard, but we're all here. We're all doing all right.
Exactly. Did they get into surfing? Did they follow their dad's footsteps, or did they go in another direction?
Both of them love surfing. Both of them really good at it. Jonathan came to me one day and he said, Dad, he said, would you mind if I started bodyboarding? I said, no. And he said, oh, good. He says, because I really want to go with my mate, and we go, you know, they go to a certain place to go bodyboarding. And I said, yeah, fine. And so he went to bodyboarding then, and then he went into snowboarding. He loves snowboarding. He currently is in America at the moment and lives over there. He's an American citizen. And Andrew used to hate water. You put him in a bath, he used to scream his head off. And now he's like ringing me up, Dad, are you coming down? I'm going for a wave. I'm going to go such and such. So I have a really good sort of, you know, sort of with my son. We went out to Watergate the other day, the two of us. Perfect conditions as well. You know when I text you?
Yeah.
It was really good. Yeah.
Beautiful.
But that just shows you, I went out there and on the main peak where everyone was, and I knew all the boys out there. I looked at it and I thought, I'm not going to get a wave here. They're just like on that level above me now. So I moved down to a peak a bit further down, and I had one or two all right waves, but the whole session, the waves were perfect. But I came in, I hadn't had a really good time, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about. Just getting out there and just being in the water is just sometimes enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
With the competing side of things as well, you said you've competed all the way up to the age of 60. What made you want to stop and just make it more a recreational thing?
Leslie, I was doing the tour, and then at the end of the year, Dave Reed, who runs the tour, they had this big presentation night for who's won this and won that, and they had a most inspirational surfer award for the tour, and I was lucky enough to pick that up, and kind of like afterwards, Leslie said, "Do you want to carry on?" Because I never went to events kind of think, well, I'm going to win this, I'm going to win this. I kind of like just went like heat at a time. If I can get through this heat like this, and if I'm lucky enough, I get through, and sometimes I'd end up in like a quarterfinal or something like that. And I think, well, I might get lucky. And that's how I did the pro tour. She said, do you want to, sort of end up being knocked out in your first heat every time, that type of thing? I thought, no, I don't want to do that. But it was hard. It took me about 3 years to get contest mentality out of my head. The boys will say I've not been down to a contest now since I was I'm 67 now, so I haven't been to a contest in like 7 years. Because especially those first 2 or 3 years, I know if I turned up at the contest, they'd be going, "Oh, Jed, you're going in this, or are you going to do this?" And I'd have gone, yeah, if you see what I mean, because in my mind, I still wanted to do it. But I now go out for a surf and I enjoy it for like when I first started surfing. I enjoy it just for the being in the water, the feeling of. One thing I really miss is I wear contact lenses, and I wear them in the surf now. But in them early days, I used to dive underneath the wave and just look up through and see all the bubbles and stuff as you come popping up through the other side. I really miss that because when I duck dive now, I have to keep my eyes closed, otherwise I lose my lenses. So you're like going down to this darkness and you're coming up and then pop up. I miss that. That's one thing I do miss. But yeah, I still enjoy surfing.
Yeah. There's got to be a point though where you, like you say, where you kind of go, you spent most of your adult life competing and doing that. You obviously enjoyed it. But like you say, you don't want to get to a point where you're starting to lose heats and not enjoy it so much, because then, you just kind of, you might get that mentality, and your wife's probably right with saying it, where you go, I'm not enjoying this anymore, I'm not going to do it. And that would be such a shame to lose that, wouldn't
it? Yeah. I went to, the first contest I went back to was, we had one down at Spikes Memorial, Tony Good's brother, and it's to commemorate his life, and all the boys from Brighton come down and they have like their own little contest, and then we have our contest side by side. They come in that as well, and it's just a good friendly get together. I went down to that. I didn't go in it, but I judged it, and it was good to see everyone down there and watch some of the youngsters coming on and how they're doing now, sort of thing. So yeah.
How do you see the surf scene now from when you first started to where it now is presently? I mean, you've obviously seen a lot of changes in the surf scene in the UK and around the world. What do you think it's a good thing that's happening now, where people are identifying it as a good sport, and escapism, a good way to travel around the world? Competitions are now all over the TV and stuff. Do you think it's a good thing?
Yeah. It doesn't matter whether it's the contest side of things or whether it's the free surfing. I mean, you've got this wave pool built at Bristol now. I've been up to it 2 or 3 times. I think, it's man-made. It's incredible what they've done. Absolutely incredible. That is going to, if you live in the Bristol area and you've got that on your doorstep, you can go there in midsummer and you'd be riding, 2 to 3 foot waves, and it's there. It's mechanical. You will progress. You will get better. It'll help our competitive surfers because they've got, do you know what the ocean's like? One day it's 1 foot, next day it's 4 foot, and then it's back to 1 foot. It could be onshore. Whereas there you've got this mechanical thing going, and there's talk of more of them. So you've got that element coming into it. The only thing is our coastline. We've only got a certain amount of coastline, and you go down to any of the beaches nowadays, and got 200 surfers out there is the norm, and you've got to go out there and try and get your wave. So if people realise that, if they're learning it through that. If you're learning now, that is what you see. It's normal to have 200 people out there. We regress back to the 70s when maybe 10 or 20 of you out, and there was space for everyone. You let people have waves, they would let you have waves. But if you're brought up nowadays, it's going to be more competitive. It's got to be, otherwise you won't catch waves. And if you realise you go out there and instead of having 10, 15 waves, you're only going to get maybe 2 to 4 waves on a good day, accept it, because that's the way it is. That's why we were saying about them days where you turn up and there's only a couple of you in there, and even for half an hour, enjoy it, because that's your moment.
Yeah, those days are far and few. I mean, it's sad. It's not. Is it sad to say? It is sad to say. Those days are far and few between. But as the old cliche goes, the early bird gets the worm, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but those 200 surfers in the water, every single one of them will be wanting that stoke, that feeling. It's no different to me when I paddle out. I want to catch waves and have that feeling. They want to have that waves and have that feeling. And I don't blame them, because it's an absolutely wonderful sport lifestyle.
It is an amazing lifestyle. Yeah, it's definitely. I still promote it now as well. Even when I have people come and talk to me about it, because a lot of people know that I surf. Marines being, well, being in the Navy previously, that being in the Marines is quite a small knit community, serving and non-serving as well. I get a lot of people come and speak to me about it and say, how can we get involved in competitions? Is there a club and all that sort of thing, and I get something out of talking to them too. I can get sidetracked for a couple of hours, like we're talking now, just talking about surfing. And I don't think, you can really do that, because there's so many different directions: board shapes, fins, waves, where you've been traveling. There's so much to talk about, and there's so much familiarity, and people can identify with that. And I think that's what's unique about surfing as well.
I agree. It is. And what I like about it is over the years, the friends that are built up, and anyone starting off now is going to do the same. They're going to turn up at the beach and they'll find somebody else who's starting, in the white water. They'll start off and they're having a good time, and then they'll get together afterwards at the beach. And then, years later, they've met a few more people, and that's going to be the continuation of the surfing community, isn't it? And that's happening all around the world. So, you're just going to get more surfers. There's still the same amount of surf breaks out there. That's never going to change unless our, sort of coastline changes. So we've just got to get used to the crowds and live together, as they say.
Are you still involved with the surf industry still at the moment?
I've always kind of kept myself away from it, but I've been asked to, say, for instance, teach. I didn't want to lose my enthusiasm for actually surfing. And me personally, I'm not a teacher like that. I taught myself, and I taught myself from watching other surfers around me and what they were doing and asking them, and I've gradually watched my heroes, sort of thing, my local heroes, and like in the early days, like Nigel Simmons and Steve Daniels and guys like that, and watched the way they surfed and try to think, well, I'll pick up on that, and then watch surf movies and things, and gradually it got me to where I was.
Do you find there was much like technical aspect? What, I'll rephrase the question. Technique is quite a pinnacle point these days. You've got a lot of surf coaches, especially with the kids, and now with the WSL, was the ASP. People are looking at the pros, and they've got trainers and technicians that tell them, where to put their arms, or where their compression, extension, and all that sort of really technical side of the skill for surfing comes in. Did you ever start to recognize that, or when did you start to recognize that a little bit more as you developed in your surfing career?
Probably too late, because like I
Same as
said,
me.
I kind of like taught myself, and then when it got to a point where you started to get surf coaches, that it was I probably had too many bad habits. I was, in the latter years of the contest side of things, and but I remember there was a South African came over, and he told me about the compression, and there was one thing, bad habit he said he'd pick me up on, is I would take off, and then I would say hit the lip and come back down, and then I'd like momentarily like stand there as much to say, wow, look at that, and then I would go into my next move. And he said, get that out, it's a bad habit. He says, just do it, get it all flowing, go from that maneuver down through the next maneuver. But I wish I'd known that 20 years ago in the early days. But the coaches nowadays, they're on it. They know about things like diet and like the mechanics of the body, and then each surfer is an individual, and you've got one surfer, he's not going to be like a Kelly Slater. Mick Fanning isn't like Kelly Slater, but they're two of the world-class surfers, and they will have different dynamics, they'll have different styles, and it's a good coach will pick up on their student and encourage them to bring that, incorporate that into their style. Because when you sit down and you're in front of judges, the judges ultimately look at not only just the maneuver, but the way you've created that maneuver, and where you've then moved on to the next maneuver. And if somebody is dynamic and flowing, as opposed to somebody who's just like bang does dynamic one maneuver, they will look at and judge them on, obviously it depends on that maneuver as well. If they've just done an insane maneuver, they'll get a 10. But that's what coaches are doing, and they'll focus them mentally as well, because as you know, in competitive surfing, to be a competitive surfer, you have to have that competitive mindset as well. And if you're down there, how to pick yourself up to get you through that heat or whatever, things you need to do.
This brings us on really nicely to the last couple of things that I'd like to go on to. So I have got some viewer questions. You probably saw on Instagram that I put some viewer questions up for people to ask. I've got 4 of them here for you. The first one is from Ewan, who's from Llangennith. And he says, do you watch the WSL events? And what do you think of the new WSL format that's come out?
Yes, I do. I've watched it from its conception all the way through, when it was DSP, right the way through to its new format. It seems to me it's being driven now, obviously, they wanted it televised, and they're trying to bring it into this so people have heroes and they support their heroes, and that's the way it's going to go. Whether we like it or not, that these stars now are going to be superstars of the future, and the more people in the world that are surfing, the more people. It's like your football, your golf, any big, your tennis. You were going to have these guys at the top of the tree, and it would be harder for you, like now, for somebody to get up to that level. It's such a long road, and it's so hard to get there. You just do not realise how many. You turn up at a place like, say, Puerto Rico, and we watched 10-year-olds going in the water, and they were just like shredding. They would rip me to pieces. So for like our boys over here, think of the world stage. If you want to be there, like Russell Winter did, you've got to really work at it. You might have the talent, but listen to your coaches, spend the time in the water, do the traveling, and then you'll get there.
Next question is a girl from Australia, by Sydney, called Salt Siren, and she has asked, "What was your greatest wipeout? Do you remember
it? I remember it well. We turned up at a spot, local reef break, takes special conditions for it to work. It was late 70s. We was stood there. This guy turned up, and we looked at it. He drove off, come back about 20 minutes later, and we talked each other into going out. We paddled out. It's a reef break, and I was looking at it as I'm paddling out and thinking, this is bigger than what I thought it was. And so we got round to the peak. I took off on the first wave and just made it. I didn't do anything. I just thought, I've made it. That gave me confidence. Took off on the second wave, had this intense barrel, one of the best barrels to this day I've ever had. Comes screaming out. The guy is like hooting. I'm on it now. I'm into it. The next wave it comes through, took off, and I just felt like I'm going down and the wave is moving up faster than I'm going down. And I just got pitched, went straight over, hit the reef, and I couldn't control any part of my body. I was just being pulled and torn and ripped. Bang, I felt the reef again. Luckily not my head, but my suit got literally torn with where it hit the barnacles and stuff. And I eventually got washed over the reef and round to the side. I just grabbed my board and paddled in. I thought, God, just had one of my best barrels in my life, followed by my worst wipeout. That's a wipeout. I've had plenty more.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's always the way, though, isn't it? You have a good session, and then it just takes one thing to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's it.
That was a three wave session.
Yeah,
but they were good. 3 waves.
But they were good though.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to finish off on a quick fire round, if that's okay. So the first one is, if you could have one fin setup for the rest of your life, would it be single fin, twin fin, quad, bonzer, or thruster?
Thruster.
Favorite surfer and why?
Favorite surfer? Out of all the surfers in the world? There's so many. Slater. Kelly Slater.
And you don't need to say why.
Oh, he's Kelly Slater.
Exactly. The last surfing film you watched?
Last surfing film? Well, I watch a lot on YouTube. And the last one I think was Nazaire, or maybe that wave in Mullaghmore.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't have said that, should I? That wave. That was what's his name? Connor. You've got to have balls. You've got to have balls to ride that wave, and that was a wave of a lifetime. That was incredible. That was, yeah.
There's a lot of good edits out of that one. The first surf film you've ever watched?
First surf film? We used to drive to watch them because they used to be actual movies. You went into like a school hall or like an old church or something like that, and they'd have the old projector, and you'd all be sat there like a movie, and then they'd show the film. So it would have been the early films, Five Summers and films like that. I always remember one because we went up to Exeter to watch it, drove up from Plymouth, and we got there. We were watching this film. It's called Forgotten Island of Santosha, and it's about these guys trying to find this wave, and eventually find this wave. Well, when they were like panning over the sort of surrounding area, I was like, I looked at it and I thought, we've just been there. I just surfed there. And they're going, Jed, no way, you haven't been there. Well, literally, we've just been there. It's one of the islands in the Indian Ocean. And it was like, yeah, so if anybody want to watch a good old film, it ends up this left-hander, a reef break. Incredible way. But yeah, it's called Forgotten Island of Santosha.
I'll be looking that one up in a bit.
Yeah.
What would be your dream surf trip?
My dream surf trip would be to go with obviously Leslie and my boys, Joff and Andrew, maybe to Maldives. Because there's left and rights there. So Andrew would be happy and Joff would be happy as well.
Good choice. I like the Maldives too. Jed Stone, thank you for talking to me on the Grumpy Surfer podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, and there was a lot of stories there that I'm going to stew on later, I think.
Cool. Enjoyed it.
No worries. Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. If you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share and subscribe on your podcast provider, and also go to Instagram and follow the Grumpy Surfer. Thanks for listening.